the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Our guests waiting to be profiled are Aimee Liu and choreographer Cheryl Baxter. Author Aimee Liu was born and raised in Connecticut and received her Bachelor of Arts from Yale. Within 4 years, her memoir, Solitaire, was published by Harper & Row. How did that happen at such a young age?
Thank you for having me, Joan. Solitaire was the name of that book, and it was just a matter of timing, really. It was the first memoir about anorexia that was published, and the year was 1979, and people were just beginning to hear about anorexia, but I had been living it all through high school and college, and so that's what the book was about.
When you went to Yale, were you intending to be an author?
No, I was a painter when I was at Yale.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, they have a really great art department, don't they?
Fantastic art department. I was a painting major, and it lasted for about 3 months after I got out of school, and then I realized I had to find some way to support myself, and painting, I didn't know how to do that, so.
But so then that's how, but writing, it's really phenomenal then. If you weren't in the writing department and that you came up with this memoir, were you keeping a diary?
I kept a diary from 5th grade, starting from 5th grade, all the way up until college. And actually, when I started painting, it was the only time in my life that I haven't kept a diary.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, did you go out into the public and talk about your problems?
When the book was published, yeah, I went on a full book tour and made all those
Weren't you too young?
No, I was 25.
I know, but you were very young.
I was very young, yes. I mean, I didn't really know the ropes of publishing at all then.
But didn't you feel like you were like at the top of your game, and here you were?
I was too young to even realize. I was on the Today Show, and I had no idea what a huge coup that was.
Oh, that's so great. Then you went on to edit and write for business and trade publications.
Right.
How did that come about? After the book, is that, or during?
I was living in New York when the book was published, and then I met my husband, and he was living in California, so I moved to California. And it actually was through Dr. Art Ulin, who had interviewed me on the Today Show. I got back in touch with him when I was in California and started working for him. He had a cable health program at the time, and I was working on that. And
that's very interesting, because you said you were on the Today Show, and then you turned out to be an associate producer.
And then I worked on the Today Show later. That was all through art.
Who was the host when you were on?
Brian Gumbel.
Oh, they were.
Yeah.
Very contemporary.
Before Katie.
Right. When you started actually writing, and after you were producing, what did you think you were going to do? Did you start writing novels? You didn't, did you?
I didn't right away, no. Well, I should back up. I should say I did right away.
Oh, you did?
My first novel, like most people's first novel, was completely unpublishable, and
so was that when you were still working at ABC?
No, that was before.
I mean,
that
NBC?
was when I was even back when I was living in New York City.
NBC, sorry.
NBC, right. No problem.
So, so it was before, and then you started nonfiction books,
yes,
right?
I lost the courage for fiction after an abortive attempt, and then started writing nonfiction, and co-authored about 10 books, actually.
And what were they about?
They were, I did 2 with art on child development and child health. I did several on different aspects of psychology with a psychologist co-author.
Well, did you have to go back to school and take any classes or anything?
No, I was the writer. That's the wonderful thing about writing. You get to be an expert on anything that you team up with an expert on.
So they just told you and you put it on paper so that we could understand it.
You work through the ideas, you craft the ideas, but the expertise comes from your writing partner.
Oh,
so it's kind of, you get to be a...
So you didn't become a doctor?
I didn't become a doctor, no. I didn't become a child psychologist. I didn't become a psychologist, but...
Had you had a lot of work with psychologists when you went through your anorexia?
No, none.
Oh, you didn't?
No. You know, in those days, nobody knew what it was. And so at one point in college, I actually went to the doctors at the Department of Health for the university, and they put me through a huge battery of tests and, you know, dismissed me saying, you know, you need to gain some weight. Well, that's not a helpful thing to say to an anorexic, but they didn't even know the word anorexia at the time, although the university was crawling with anorexics.
Is that right?
Even
that's
then.
Very, really interesting that it was so quiet.
Very different time from what, you know, you would encounter today. But,
Well, even though you didn't become a doctor, you went on to write novels, and I know you drew from your background on the novels.
Right.
Because the first one,
Face was the first one.
Have you written 3 novels?
3 novels so far.
Okay, so Face was the first one.
And Cloud Mountain was the second one.
It was Warner Books. Let's talk about each one.
Okay.
I want to talk about each one.
Okay.
Because it was an autobiographical.
Not so much.
Was it? As I should say,
really.
Was it?
No, it actually really wasn't, because I didn't grow up in Chinatown in New York. I'm not a photographer. My mother never ran an art gallery in New York. You know, it was really very different.
But you were drawing on your painting.
I was drawing on the painting. I was drawing on my experience with the art world. There were little bits and pieces of my father's background in China that I pulled into that book.
Oh.
It was. I view that book as sort of a rehearsal for the second book, because it proved to me that I was capable of writing a novel, which I was very gun-shy about at that point. And I began to use some of the family history.
Oh, that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
That was 1994.
Right, right.
And the story was, tell us a little bit about the story, and then we'll go on to Cloud Mountain. Do they follow?
A little bit. The story basically is about a young woman who's a photographer who grew up in Chinatown in New York City and then fled and is tortured by nightmares from something from her past. And that the story is about her figuring out what happened in her past, why she suffers this, and this kind of pull that Chinatown has for her. And within that, she explores her family's history, which that part of the book looks a lot like my father's family history.
Like Chinatown, because you didn't go to Little Havana, or you didn't go to any place like that. You went to where your roots were.
Right, and I had lived not in Chinatown, but on the edge of Chinatown for a few years when I was in New York, and I loved the place, and it was a wonderful opportunity to go back and revisit.
So the next book was Cloud Mountain.
Yes.
And it was based on your grandmother's story?
It was based on my grandparents' marriage, you know, just very briefly. My father was born in Shanghai, and his parents met around the time of the San Francisco earthquake in Berkeley, California. And that was 1906, at the time of the big earthquake. And my grandfather was there as a scholar revolutionary. He was running the revolutionary newspapers in Chinatown in San Francisco that were raising money to overthrow the Manchu Empire.
Is that right?
And my grandmother was teaching him English, and so that he could matriculate at UC Berkeley. And in 1912, he saved her life during the earthquake. They got married, they had their first child. 1912, the Manchus were overthrown in China, and my grandfather went back to become the first senator in the Republican government from his home province, and my grandmother went back with him, and they had 30 years through the warlords, through the rise of Chiang Kai-shek, through the beginning, the wind-up for the communists. And so that's the whole saga story.
That's the grandparents, though. That's the grandparents. So then the parents.
Then the parents, right.
Were they mixed too?
No, my mother is American from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
And my father is half Chinese by way of Shanghai, and they met in Washington, D.C.
Oh, is that right?
During World War II, yeah.
Well, even though you're not that much of a mix,
right.
I mean, the roots seem to be really strong.
Well, the stories are really strong. I mean, the stories are so fantastic. And when I realized, I think my true calling as a writer, I realized that where you start is with the best stories that you have in your own family. And so that's where we began.
The great thing with Cloud Mountain, it's been published in 11 countries.
Yeah.
That's so great, isn't it?
It was the first big novel about intermarriage. And, it was following Amy Tan's talking about being Chinese in America and that whole realm, but nobody at the time had written a book about intermarriage. It was as if intermarriage between Chinese and Caucasians didn't exist until 1960. And actually there was quite a lot of it at the turn of the century, as I knew from digging back into the story of my grandparents.
And then Flash House.
Flash House came along.
And this is the new Warner book.
This is the new one.
And Flash House means?
Flash House is a term for a brothel, actually. One of the storylines in this book is about a child who's trafficked into the sex industry in India.
Oh, which is so prominent and it's such a
huge problem. This book takes place in 1949, but it has always been a problem. And this is the story of this girl, Kamla, who is trafficked into that business, and the American woman who attempts to rescue her from that trade. And then it also turns into a bit of a spy novel, because it turns out that this same American woman has other people that she needs to rescue. Her husband disappears.
It's such a problem.
Yeah.
And from there, or while you were doing that, this book, My California, came about, and it's a series of essays.
Right.
And
it's a benefit.
Us a little bit. It's a benefit.
This is such a fantastic project. It's a benefit for the California Arts Council, because the Arts Council's budget was stripped by almost 90% in the last year due to the California budget crisis. And Patty Calistro, Angel City Press, and Donna Wares from CaliforniaAuthors.com got together and decided that they would do this book entirely through the charity of writers, their services, the publicity, even the paper was donated.
Everything was donated.
Everything was donated.
And it all goes to the California Arts Council.
All goes to the California Arts Council for their Writers in the Schools programs. And
which is great, because I was on the California Arts Council for many years, and when something like this comes in, you can write it in as a line item, and you know that that money's going to go directly to what
programs in the schools, supporting the arts, all the arts, dance, painting, photography, everything. But this particular book is just going to the school program, and it's
for the writing program.
For the writing program,
I know, which is so great. Did you have to call and ask if you could be in it, or did they call and ask you?
They put out the word really to all the California community of authors, and wonderful people joined in. I mean, I have an essay in there, but so does Tom Steinbeck, Mark Arax, David Kippen, who I know you've had on your show before. Just a host of wonderful, wonderful people. Michael Chabon is in there.
How many words did they say you could have?
They didn't. They just wanted everybody to write from the heart about really their neighborhood. So it's a wonderful tapestry of pieces. You've got Sacramento represented, Beverly Hills, the countryside in California, Berkeley, the whole spectrum of California is in the book.
I think that's interesting, because My California means all of these authors and where they are. I guess Mark Arax would do Fresno.
Exactly.
You did Beverly Hills.
Right.
Oh, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome, Joan. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on today, and thanks for watching this part of the show. Don't go away. Cheryl Baxter will be on in just just a minute. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here with choreographer, actress, Cheryl Baxter, who was born and raised in Wisconsin. She graduated, in fact, from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and never went very far away from your home, did you, Cheryl?
No, I like to stay right in my home.
Were you going to be a dancer in Wisconsin, too?
Yes, I thought about being a dance teacher with my mother.
Oh, you did?
I thought about it, and then I moved out to LA.
Oh, so did you train as a choreographer?
I trained with my mother as a choreographer and a dancer. She took me to New York every summer to study, and to Chicago at Gus Giordano's every couple of months.
Well, what is a choreographer?
A choreographer is the person who puts together all the dance steps in the show and teaches them, puts together the concept of the number and the steps.
Do you have to be a good dancer to be a choreographer?
Some dancers can't be choreographers. They don't have that ability.
That's what I'm wondering, because people don't know what a choreographer does, actually. I mean, I can see where you could put everything together, but don't you have to get out and show them how to do it?
You do. You do. You do have to be a dancer, but some dancers can't choreograph. They can't put the piece together. There needs to be a beginning and a middle and an end of every number. And some dancers can learn the dance steps from another choreographer, but maybe don't have that style or that talent.
Did you think you were going to be doing stage or films?
I wanted to do everything.
Oh, so you wanted to do everything. But then you moved to Los Angeles? Is
I
that
did.
where your career started?
It did start in LA. Oh, I moved to Chicago and then to Opryland at Nashville, Tennessee.
Did you work there?
I worked at Opryland when I was young. And then I moved out here, and I wanted to dance on the Carol Burnett show like all the dancers did, and I got here and it was over. So
the show was over.
It was over. But I did get to do a lot of Academy Awards and shows with the Carol Burnett people later on.
Oh, so did you put together those little pieces like Golden Globe?
I did put together when I got a little older. I started dancing in the award shows and assisting, and then slowly I got to put together some of the pieces.
Anita Mann used to do some of those, didn't she?
I love Anita Mann. I worked with Anita Mann.
Yeah. So, but you do the same kind of thing that she does.
Now I do, yes.
You have to get all the dancers, you get all the dancers there.
Right.
Do you audition them too?
I audition them, and they, I put them through either a tap combination or jazz or ballet, depending on what the style is of the number.
So that's out of vocabulary, out of a dance vocabulary. So if they don't understand that.
Right, then I don't hire them.
What about music? Do you know a lot about music?
I do. I was a flute player and a piano player.
Oh, so you have...
That helped a lot, being a choreographer, learning how to set the number and how to build the number.
One of the things that you did was One from the Heart, Francis Ford Coppola movie with, and you worked with Kenny Ortega.
Kenny Ortega and
whom I know too.
And Gene Kelly.
I know. I didn't know Gene Kelly did that.
Yes, he was the associate choreographer.
Is that right?
It was.
Was Terry Garr in that movie?
Terry Garr was in that movie. She had the dance, and Raul Julia.
I remember that movie was so fabulous, and it was a bomb, wasn't it?
It was, but I think it was before its time. I think it was 1981, maybe.
And you did it on a stage set?
Zoetrope Studios.
Was it in Culver City then?
It was right here in Hollywood.
Oh, it was in Hollywood.
Or not here, but in Hollywood.
Well, I remember because Terry used to go, and she's like, I'm just dancing my little self to death.
Yes, she did. It was so much fun. We spent months on that.
So was that like a learning situation for you?
That was a learning situation for me. He brought in 8, Kenny and Gene Kelly brought in 8 girls, and we were the assistant choreographers for months.
And what did you do as an assistant?
As an assistant, I would help choreograph some of the numbers. We would jump around in a room for 8 hours a day. And
I was just thinking as we're talking, would you take a group and teach them routines?
Well, Terry Garr would come in, Nastasia Kinski would come in, Raul would come in, and we would workshop everything.
I see.
It was a workshop situation.
Was very. And then you did Dance Becomes Her with
Death Becomes Her
with
Meryl Streep.
Dance. I've got dance on my mind.
I did.
But
and I was an assistant.
Was there dancing in there?
The opening number, there's a big disco number, and Meryl Streep dances like a dream and sings.
Oh, because that's what I was wondering, if you choreographed some other, like the movements of their...
I helped Meryl Streep, along with Brad Jeffries was the choreographer, and I was the assistant to Meryl.
But that was for the dance section?
For the dance section.
Yeah, I was wondering if you actually moved them in the film.
No, in the opening. Yeah, it was a fun.
And you acted in that?
I was in that, yes. Just little.
What did you do? Little tiny things?
Little things, you know. Yeah.
But how do you teach, like, someone like Meryl Streep to dance?
Well, they have a long day. We do an 8-hour day. I work with a lot of actors. I go on the set of General Hospital a lot, and I work with those actors, teach them how to waltz, teach them how to jitterbug, teach them how to whatever they need to learn, any kind of ballroom dancing. So it's just the process. Some people learn faster than others. Some have had dance training, some haven't. I really have to break it down when they haven't had the dance training, but some of them have a natural. I work off of their natural ability. If I see something's not going to work with them, I kind of change and go in another direction. Definitely.
So you've done Broadway, LA stage, and you've danced, and you've choreographed, and you've acted. What are the differences in these places?
Well, I think stage, I did Sophisticated Ladies, and Cats. Stage is broad, as you know. Everything is bigger than life. When you go into film, you have to be everything needs to be a little smaller, and commercials. You know, I mean, everything has its own agenda.
You were being directed by someone else. Is it easy to be directed by someone, or did your ideas of choreography come into?
I think it's a nice. I can't say it's easy. I think it's just working with that person, finding that relationship and what works when you're directed by someone else, you know. I think it's just a process that you go through.
Is it you accept?
I do accept it. I do.
I mean, it's something that...
I do. You have to kind of get into their head.
Do you give ideas? Do you say, oh, I could do it better if I did 2 tours jetés or 2 pirouettes?
I do. I give ideas, and then we work it out together, depending on the director.
And does that happen to you from, say, a dancer working with you?
Sometimes. An assistant, and I like the show I'm working on now, which is What If at the Hudson. My good friend Joe McKee and I are working on that together.
I was going to ask you, he's a choreographer.
He's a choreographer too, and he's worked with me for many years.
Hy do you need 2 people on such it's a little stage at the Hudson Theater. It's a play called What If.
What If,
Is it a series of small
Yes, it's
vignettes?
It's a review, as if what if Rodgers and Hammerstein that didn't write, Sound of Music, and they wrote The Assassins, how would that look?
Oh, so then you go from
the switching.
Sondheim.
Right. So what's great is because Joe and I have both done a lot of musicals. The musicals I didn't do, he did know. So we flip-flopped, like he did Chorus Line. I came out here and Chorus Line was already gone by the time I got to LA, so I had chosen to do Cats and Sophisticated Ladies, and so he could fill in the parts that I wasn't as clear on.
It really takes 2 people.
It takes 2, and it's nice because when there are men and women in the production, it's nice. I like to have another male choreographer with me.
Then how long will the choreographer stay with a show like that? Do you stay there all the time?
No, opening night.
Is that it? You don't come back to say,
I'll come back. I'll come back.
But do they?
Sometimes they do, but a lot of times opening night is your night. And
then do you work with the director?
I do. Bruce Kimmel. Yes, he's fabulous.
Does he tell you what to do, or do you tell him what to do?
I come in with concepts, and then we talk about it, and we work on a lot of things together. And he's written great lyrics for this show. It's adorable.
He wrote the lyrics?
Yes.
Have you worked with him before?
No, I haven't.
So how did he find you?
I don't know. He doesn't remember. I've been in LA for many years, 25 years, and I think I've been, going from job to job, and I think your name gets around. So
that's what I wondered. Is there like the inner circle of choreographers?
Right.
And they all take dance classes together. Do you still take dance classes?
I do still take dance classes.
And where do you go?
I do. I try to go to ballet once in a while. I go to tap, even though tap is my forte. I've worked with Gregory Hines and Savion Glover and the Nicholas Brothers, and so tap is really my thing.
Did you take lessons from them or just work with them?
No, I worked with them. Sophisticated Ladies, the movie Tap. I did the movie Tap with Gregory and Sammy Davis Jr. Oh, that was one of my favorite.
Isn't this something you'll remember your whole life?
Yes.
I mean, you had 2 of the most fabulous people who aren't with us now.
Yes, it was such a shock when
Gregory
passed. And I've worked a lot with Gregory and with Savion. So,
and Savion, I saw him on Broadway.
Yes,
wasn't he good?
Yes. Yes.
Did he learn from them?
He did. I knew him when he was 12, and he came up through it with Gregory. And with the movie tap. But that, I try to keep up my tap classes because as a choreographer, you need to kind of get out of your own thing sometimes and go learn from somebody else and keep your mind going so you don't get stuck in one thing.
I know. So should a choreographer be have a stamp on them that says this is the way I always come to it, and this is my style, a style?
Sometimes, but I like to be versatile so that I fit in different forms. Sometimes if you're really stamped on one thing, they only think of you in that. So I like to put like you asked me if I like film or television or TV, I like to do it all.
But if somebody came to see Cheryl Baxter's choreography, would they say, oh, she does a lot of plies, or she does a lot of jumps, or something like that that differentiates you?
That makes me different? Well, I am known for my tap. I am known for my tap. When they say Cheryl Baxter, they say, oh, she taps. She's a good tapper.
But then do you try to put tap into the...
I do, and I also was trained, I had a lot of background in Fosse style and different styles that I like, so people will come to me when it's that kind of a style also. So I do, because I was raised to learn everything. So I'm not just stuck in, like, some dancers are just hip-hoppers or,
I see, but we just have a minute left, but I know you're working at Universal in Japan.
I am.
How different is that from working here?
Well, we do send people from here over there. So it is Americans that we send over to Japan. My husband and I, George Ratliff, he directs and does the shows over there. We were at Universal here in Los Angeles for 12 years. We had a do-up group.
So you just do the work at
I
Universal
do the work
in
here,
Japan.
and then my husband goes over with the show because I have an 11-year-old son.
Like what kind of shows?
We do doo-wop, 50s doo-wop review and a Blues Brothers review.
Oh, you do? And then does it tour all over Japan?
Just stays in Osaka. They have a Universal Studios in Osaka.
Oh, they do? Well, I'm so glad you came on.
Thank you.
You taught us everything about everything. I didn't get to talk about my ballet training.
I know you've had ballet at the machines.
With Tanya, she was the best.
Yes, I know.
It was nice having you.
It's nice meeting you too. Thank you.
And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. We'll see you next time.